The sun over Ethria Prime never truly set. It slid behind smog-polished towers and turned the sky into a sheet of violet glass. Rian Cade, a veteran courier for Pulse Runner Logistics, threaded his Aster 9 through the braided air lanes like a needle through silk. His dashboard pulsed a merciless warning. Priority. Critical.
Window.
Closing. Yeah, I know, Rian muttered, tilting the bike. The grav rings sang, brushing a cargo barge's wake and dipping under a silver gondola. He liked to think of himself as a friendly outlaw, 10 million kilometers on the odometer and not a single smashed parcel. But today the city's traffic hive felt carnivorous. He took a maintenance ribbon that ran parallel to the Civic Park's perimeter lights, a last resort thread he saved for emergencies. The Aster 9 vibrated as he boosted. A blue-red flare clawed up behind him, siren pure and surgical, slicing through crowd noise and engine thrum. Rian sighed. And there goes the grace period. He let the passive brakes bloom, easing to a hover above a bioluminescent meadow where people picnicked under domes of filtered air. The interceptor that parked behind him was all clean angles and matte armor, the kind of cruiser that made even corporate execs sit straighter. The hatch hissed. Out stepped an officer in charcoal tactical cloth and soft ceramic plates, tall, balanced, unmistakably not entirely human. Her ears, triangular and velveted in bright rust, twitched once toward the whine of his cooling rings. Her long, plume-tipped tail flicked behind. Her orange fur, short and sleek along jaw and forearms, caught the park's cyan glow. But it was her eyes, liquid amber with a predator's steadiness, that unspooled Rian's favorite reflex, the sideways quip. "Evening," she said. Her voice was alto, rounded, edged with command. "Do you know why I stopped you? Your cruiser wanted an autograph?" Rian smiled, then sobered under that gaze. "I was fast. I'm late. The usual trilogy. Rian Cade. Pulse Runner. Aster 9 with unauthorized coil tuning," she recited, checking a slim pain in her palm. "You crossed a restricted ribbon. Desperate times," he said. She stepped closer, the faint, clean scent of ionized steel clinging to her gear. "Officer Seravix," she said. "Ethria Civic Guard. A beat. And this is your official reminder that desperate times don't suspend the laws that keep people alive." Rian kept his hands visible, the city's violet dusk mirroring across his visor. "The parcel's biosensitive," he said. "If it warms 3 degrees, someone cries real tears, and I lose my perfect streak." "Your streak is intact because you're skilled," Sera replied, "not because you bend physics with bravado." She gestured to the Aster 9's belly. Coil singing. Whoever tuned it didn't bother with noise masks. "That would be me," he said, lighter than he felt. Sera's ears angled in something like amusement, honesty noted. She tapped her pain. "You're receiving a citation for the ribbon breach and the mod. You'll still make your window if you take Corridor Delta by the water towers." Delta was longer, but stable. "I appreciate a compassionate tyrant," Rian said. She issued the ticket. The printer in her gauntlet whispered and spit a fiber tab. When he took it, his fingers brushed a second, smaller card sandwiched behind it. Sleek, black, featureless, except for 6 digits in white. Not a badge number. A direct line. His eyes lifted. Sera's face remained disciplined, but her tail's tip made a single brief arc, a tell he'd only ever seen in old holos of foxes considering new paths. "For follow-up questions," she said. "Or if you want clarification on Corridor Delta." "Am I being offered office hours? Considerate? Outreach?" The hush between them stretched. City noises a soft wall. Rian slid the card into a side pocket. Outreach accepted. Sera inclined her head, returned to the interceptor. The cruiser lifted, lights fading into the lattice of lanes. Rian exhaled. "Vix," he said to the violet air. The name felt like a hinge. He palmed the card again before stowing it. One number felt like trouble. But another part of him, the part that liked tricky routes, whispered, or opportunity. He made the window via Delta, barely. The lab tech swore gratitude. Rian signed and went hunting for supper in the sidereal quarter, a riot of steam and lanterns, grilled spices and riveted steel. He was halfway through a bowl of noodles when an interceptor drifted by low, lights dormant. The sensor array looked familiar. Small city, he muttered. Then told himself, It wasn't her dot next day. Far in the lane shadows of Foundry Sector 6, Rian finished a drop to a foreman who— "This place has a great view," Rian said, gesturing to a landscape of cranes chewing sky. "You're on break?" "I brought my own," she said, raising a small thermal cask. "And my patrol's wide." They stood at the edge of the platform, the city breathing under them. Sera asked about courier work, the oddities he'd ferried, the maps stored in his muscles. Rian told a sterilized version, leaving out names and the threadbare seams of his luck. "You prefer unpredictability," Sera observed. "I prefer not being bored." Her ears tipped. "Noted." She glanced down to the foreman's dock. "Your last client had a short temper. All your clients like that?" Rian blinked. He hadn't said where he'd been or who. "You keep files on everyone, officer." "I listen," she said. The faintest smile bared a clean line of canines. "Polite, not a threat." "And I'm observant." When she left, wind skittered grit across the platform. Rian watched the interceptor shrink to a glyph. The word coincidence had a half-life. He felt it decaying already. The next few days bloomed with Sera's shadow. Sometimes he spotted her cruiser high and idle, a dark bead against the lanes. Sometimes she simply appeared as he locked a crate, offering a steady drink water. "You forget, or a colder don't use that lane. There's a collision chain 2 clicks ahead." One afternoon in the artisan pavilions, a musician named Orla poured him sparkling tea in exchange for a story about crosswinds over the river stacks. Rian's comm pinged with a blocked ID message. "Careful with unsealed beverages," the text read. "People aren't always kind to couriers who say no." Rian looked up. No interceptor. No Sera. Still, the back of his neck prickled, hairs alert. He set the tea down untouched and left a generous tip for Orla's hurt confusion. On the bike, he stared at the black card in his pocket, weighing warmth against wariness. That evening, a ping from a client he barely knew, Dr. Melis Corin, liaison for Lumen Forge Labs, a boutique R&D firm. The job glittered dangerous. Move a single shielded module from an upper city vault to a sub-level lab beneath the river spine. Strict blackout. No logs, no comms, extra hazard pay. Rian's thumb hovered over accept. He heard Sera's tone in his head. Practical, implacable. He accepted anyway, a long, slow breath emptying out the argument he didn't want to have. On the descent platform above the river spine, the interceptor arrived as if conjured. Sera's boots hit the deck with the soft thud of inevitability. Her orange fur drank the slate light. Rain freckled her cheekbones. "Don't," she said. "Not the spine. Triple hijackings in 48 hours. Corridor Theta adds 40 minutes, but you keep your skin." "I keep my skin," Rian said, "but not my bonus." "Bonuses don't matter to corpses." He glared at the river fog. "You tracking me, officer?" Sera's tail stilled. "I'm advising you," she said. "Theta. Now." He went Theta, fury locking his jaw. It felt like a leash disguised as care. He rubbed the black card until the digit smudged into a private galaxy. 2 nights later, Dr. Corin's second job landed. A courier's dream and nightmare. Astronomical pay. Bigger secrecy. Same rules. No logs, no comms. Unregistered crawls through infrastructure Q tunnels under the west grid. Rian scrubbed his transponder, patched his rings for heat masking, ghosted the Aster 9 into the sublevels known as the Sump, a cathedral of corroded struts, dripping conduits, and air that smelled like forgotten storms. The drop point was a gantry bolted to a silent coolant tower. He hovered, engines a cat's purr, eyes drinking the dark as if it would drink him back. A single, certain feeling rose. Not alone. 3 figures unfolded from the pipework. No street-level bravado, just clean violence. Pulse rifles, and a baton that hissed with plasma. Rian threw the Aster 9 sideways, using the bike as a moving shield as he yanked a compact plasma cutter from its holster. Pulse fire smacked the frame, ringing his ribs. The baton wielder lunged at train. Rian parried on instinct, sparks sketching wild constellations in the humid air dot. He was fast. They were faster. The baton kissed his knuckles, and the cutter skittered away. A rifleman raised for a clean shot. A white cone of light crashed down like a theatrical god. Siren. A sonic scalpel. The interceptor dropped from a black seam in the girders, landing hard enough to rattle bolts. Sera flowed out of the side hatch, already moving. 2 sonic stunners barked. 2 riflemen faltered and folded. The baton's arc met her forearm. She rolled under, pivoted, stripped the weapon with a little explosion of motion that looked effortless and wasn't. 10 seconds. Silence Dot? Are you hurt? She asked. Automated courier safety protocol flagged a deviation, Sera said. Clipped official. No, he said, quiet as a blade. I scrubbed everything. There is no protocol. She didn't answer. The dripping resumed, slow and cruel. They secured the attackers with mag cuffs. Rian's knuckles pulsed like a second heart. How? He pressed, voice low. How are you tracking me? Sera's ears flattened a fraction, tail sweeping once along the deck, tension made visible. You were about to die, she said. My explanation doesn't change that. It changes whether I can breathe. The silence unfurled. She looked to the Aster 9's undercarriage, as if the bike itself had betrayed him. Fine. A microtransponder, she said at last. Military grade. Attached the night of the ticket. Under the power converter. Rian followed her gaze and saw nothing. But he didn't need to. The nausea in his throat did the seeing for him. You put a leash on me. I put a tether between you and not dying. Her voice sharpened. Then frayed. Last year I had a partner. Orin. Brilliant. Reckless. We disagreed about caution on a weapons tip. He went in alone. I arrived 5 minutes late. They zipped him in plastic. I promised I would never be 5 minutes late again. Rian's anger met the rawness behind her eyes and found itself less tall. I am not Orin, he said. No, Sera said, and her voice, for the first time, trembled. But I didn't know how to stop watching. He swallowed the answer that felt like salt. Take it off my bike. Now. She crouched, peeled a wafer from a seam he never would have found. It sat in her palm like a silver scale. She crushed it. The sound was very small. Rian stripped the Aster 9 when he got home, hands working until they remembered calm. He slept not at all. The sump skittered in his head. Sparks, rifled air, Sera's snarl of effort. 2 days later, his door lock blinked wrong. Inside, nothing was smashed. Everything was opened. Panels unscrewed. Cushion cores stacked like anatomy diagrams. They'd been careful. Professional. His calm lit with static that resolved into a single sentence. We know you have it. Next time we won't ask. Then it erased itself. A second message flared and auto-sealed. Maley's Corin again. The competition is Helix Meridian. Be careful. They prefer the end of things tidy. Rian weighed the precinct in his mind. Forms, suspicion, time he did not have. The official route would sand him down and leave him bleeding patience. He reached for the sleek black card that still carried warmth from his pocket. Disused cargo platform. Sector Gamma 9. Above the old hydro plant. 1 hour. He sent it without a greeting. He didn't expect one in return. He went anyway. Rain stitched the sky. Sera stood at the platform's edge in a long coat, ears damp, tail still. No cruiser. No insignia. You wanted to see me, she said, the formality softening her name into something private. Rian explained everything. The erased message, the careful wreck of his apartment, the whisper of Helix Meridian. He cut the story lean. No drama. Just wait. When he finished, Sera's jaw had hardened into something that looked like promise. Helix Meridian built its fortune on subcontracts, she said. Lately, they've been eating those contracts instead. Biotech. Gray budgets. Every rumor is a red flag. We don't have proof. Then we make some, Rian said. No trackers, he added. Sera's ears flicked. No trackers, she repeated. We do it as partners. You bring the city I can't reach. I bring the doors you can't open. She held out her hand, gloved, steady. He took it. Her palm was warm. The rain made everything else cold. The city bent to them in different ways. Rian knew which rivermen drank at which shift and which of them would sell a rumor for a meal. He traded couriers' favors for whispers. Crates landing at Helix's private air pier were logged as soil inoculants, but rode in high-energy coffins. 2 lab techs quit on the same day and left their plants behind, which meant fear. Sera pulled at threads of code. In borrowed server rooms, she mapped shell companies that looped back to a Helix shadow budget. She decrypted third-party manifests. Their shielding specs iced her blood. These are containment signatures for mutables, she told Rian quietly, not fertilizer. Not anything with mercy. Rian bought a tower schematic from an architect with too many debts and got, as a tip-in, a rumor. A buried wing beneath Helix Tower called the Nursery, where projects went to grow teeth. One night in an empty train car, they built their entry like a myth you could diagram. Rian found a pneumatic waste shaft that ran from the executive kitchens to a sub-level treatment bay. The shaft's schedule was rhythm, quiet beats between loud ones. Sera modeled drone patrols in the bowels of the tower and found 3 diamonds of blind space. They rehearsed in a decommissioned filtration plant, chalking corridors across concrete, memorizing hand signs and timing their breaths. Sera tuned a pocket EMP to Helix's drone's favorite frequency, so the machines would sleep instead of scream. On the night, rain fell like the city had decided to reconsider itself. They wore the gray of a third-party maintenance crew, carrying a coil of tubing and a toolbox full of lies. A bored guard waved them through because boredom is a better bribe than money. The waste shaft's roar vibrated their teeth. They clipped into the service rungs and dropped, controlled and terrifying, into chemical dark. They came out smelling like lemon and ozone and adrenaline. 3 corridors, a drone asleep under Sera's hush, a palm scanner looped with a recorded blink from a cafeteria manager who owed someone money, then a door heavy and white with no windows. Sera braided code in breath, and the lock rolled back like a stunned eye. The room beyond felt like winter, rows of servers sighing, small lights blinking in disciplined rows. "You watch," Sera said. "I find the spine." Rian kept the cutter in his hands and counted his lungs. Sera's fingers moved like thought. Layers fell. A subtree unfolded. "Shh," she said. The word tasted wrong. She drew it into a shielded slate. The progress bar began to draw its little horizon. Rian listened to the tower's bones. Distant hum. Farther away, a footstep? No. A compressor sigh. The bar crossed 87% when the room blazed awake. Harsh light. Sirens only the servers heard. The door behind Rian shut with a hydraulic finality. The far wall became a screen. A face materialized. Commander Inaya Sol, internal oversight. Sera's superior's superior, a woman known for steel and statutes. "Stand down, Officer Vix," Sol said. Voice amplified by a god who liked rules. "Your role in the operation is concluded." Rian shot Sera a look. "Operation?" Sera's mouth opened, closed. "Commander," she said slowly, "we have evidence." "We had it 5 minutes ago," Sol said. When Deputy Marshal Kellendrome attempted a remote purge from his terminal to cover his collusion with Helix Meridian, your unsanctioned breach flushed him out. He is in custody. Sol's gaze slid to Rian, then back to Sera. "Thank you for your unpredictability." It was the exact lure our sting required. Rian felt it first as vertigo, then as anger monotonous and pure. They weren't hunters. They were lanterns on a trapline. The locks thunked back. A team in black stepped in with the careful detachment of Circengians. One took Sera's slate. Another blanketed the terminal in legal foam. No thanks, no nods. Procedures did not have room for applause. They were walked out through corridors they had learned by heart, now bright and sterile. Outside, the rain felt indecently free. The days that followed were paperwork inside rooms that swallowed sound. Rian was housed in a clean, empty apartment with a view of a billboard that sold joy in chewable form. He signed a skein of non-disclosures that read like a throat being closed. A city official slid him a heavy credit chit. Hush money with a nicer verb. Sera stood before a panel whose faces were carved from policy. Sol presided. The list of infractions was precise and damning. Unauthorized surveillance of a civilian misappropriation of departmental channels. Reckless endangerment under color of duty. Insubordination. When asked to respond, Sera looked at the table so the tears in her eyes had nowhere to fall. "My methods violated protocol," she said. "I accept the consequences." Weeks later, the feeds exploded, not with their names, which never appeared, But with Helix Meridian executives, Frog marched from their glass nest. Project Chimera dismantled, said captions. Undercover oversight triumph, said anchors. The city cheered a victory that left two ghosts hungry and nameless. Rian went back to work because that is what you do when the machine spits you back into daylight. He took safe lanes and straight routes. He learned that silence could be louder than sirens. Sera served her suspension like winter. 6 months without badge or street, then reassigned to central data analysis where cases had no faces. She ran predictive models and taught them not to lie to themselves. She slept badly, tail twitching at dreams she would not narrate to anyone. 2 months after the storm, she came plain clothes, no gauntlets, ears tucked through a cap like she might apologize for them. She sat across from him and wrapped long fingers around a cup she didn't drink. I'm sorry, she said, without armor, not just for the tracker, for using you as a way to argue with a past that won't argue back. I'm sorry, he said, for seeing only the cage and not the person building it. He slid the folded ticket across. I think this expired, and you can't write me another one from a desk. He tried a smile. Would you consider, I don't know, dinner that's not on a loading dock? A slow grin rebuilt itself across her face, touching eyes, lifting ears, warming the orange along her jaw. I would, she said. No trackers? No trackers, he echoed. I may still keep an eye on you, she added, a playful flick of tail betraying life returning. With your own 2 eyes, he said. Deal? They practiced ordinary like it was a skill. Dinner in a corner booth where the neon painted Sera's fur apricot, and Rian told a story about flying through electric snow over the lake loops. A walk along the river where she pointed out cameras most people never noticed. Sera laughed more now. It sounded like gravity remembering it could be kind. She told him about her father, a longshore mechanic who taught her to tie knots that only came undone if you wanted them to. Rian confessed that he hated sleeping alone in storms and that he'd named his bike after a star that didn't exist. They negotiated boundaries the way people negotiate bent twigs into a fire. He would text before blackout jobs. She would let the phone stay silent anyway. She would not sit in a parked cruiser on his routes. He would let her know if someone breathed too close on the docks. The city, impolite as ever, tested them. A near miss at Dock 13. A client who tried to pay for faster service with flirtation. Sera's ears angled toward the insult, and then away from it, deliberately. Rian handled it with a joke and a boundary that felt like ballast. They kissed once under a bridge where the rain wrote music on the steel. It was not desperate. It was precise. A promise to attempt the dangerous thing. Trust. Trust, however, is never the end of a story in Ethria. A courier Rian knew only as Jaw slid him a data crumb. A Helix Meridian warehouse, supposedly shuttered, humming at odd hours. A forklift operator heard low singing during midnight shifts. A hum through the floor that made teeth itch, Rian told Sera over noodles. She set her chopsticks down and looked at the violet sky like it might answer. Oversight says Helix is dormant, she said. Oversight said we were bait by accident, Rian replied. They went as civilians at first, walking the perimeter, counting cameras. Sera found a dead zone under a wind-caught tarp where a drone's view stuttered. Rian found a side door coded to a retired badge number, Deputy Drones. Whoever set up the after-party hadn't updated the guest list. They did not bring a slate this time or a city behind them. They brought themselves and a quiet agreement that if they found monsters, they would not name them alone. Inside, pallets of sealed containers ticked faintly in the dark, a chorus of captive clocks. Sera touched a lid and felt heat. Rian leaned in and listened. Not singing. Breathing. Not done, Sera whispered. Her tail brushed his wrist. Warning. Comfort. Both. Let's go get the part of the city that knows how to end things. The second storm was smaller than the first. No screens, no sting. Just a precise raid built from 2 people and the web they'd repaired. Oversight moved, embarrassed into swiftness. Helix Meridian's last, hidden seed bank of plague work was pulled into custody that now understood the word thorough. Rian testified behind glass. Sera wrote reports that did not once forget to mention the face of the mechanic who had smuggled a pallet because his kid needed surgery. They insisted the story include him. When it was over, really over, this time, Rian and Sera stood on the hydro plant roof where they had first set terms. The city glowed, unrepentant, magnificent. Sera's ears swiveled to catch the far buzz of lanes ahead for Ryan's hand the curve where healthcare formet her curve. No trackers, she said softly, as if renewing a vow. Only choices, he said. Only choices, she echoed, smiling bright as a fox in morning light. Below, the lanes braided. Above, the sky thought about rain. Between, they chose a direction and together took it. Ethria Prime was never quiet for long. Even after the fall of Helix Meridian, its veins of they had fallen into a rhythm not of secrecy or fear, but of deliberate simplicity. Rian still rode his Aster 9, though he'd replaced the coil with a legal one and kept the speed limiter engaged. Most days. Sera, now officially reinstated in the department's Civilian Coordination Division, had traded her interceptor for a plain electric bike that purred more like an animal than a machine. They met often in the twilight hour, when Ethria's perpetual dusk gave everything a watercolor hue. Sometimes it was for dinner, sometimes just to watch the lanes flicker to life above them. Rian would tell stories about the day's runs, the odd characters he met, the ridiculous packages he ferried, and Sera would listen, tail curling lazily behind her chair, her golden eyes soft with amusement. "Do you ever miss it?" Rian asked one evening as they sat on a balcony overlooking the East Tower district. "Miss what?" "The chase, the sirens, being the one who shows up first." Sera sipped her drink, the glow of the glass painting amber highlights across her orange fur. "Sometimes. Then I remember what it cost me. The silence is better company than ghosts." He nodded, staring out at the shifting web of light. "You ever think the city's alive?" Sera's ears twitched. "It breathes," she said. "And it remembers. That's close enough." Their quiet conversation was interrupted by a faint vibration through the floor. A power fluctuation rippled across the skyline, an electrical heartbeat that momentarily dimmed the towers. Sera's eyes narrowed. That wasn't random. The blackout lasted 3 seconds, but in Ethria, 3 seconds was eternity. In that heartbeat, 2 transit lanes collided mid-air, drones fell from altitude, and every comm hub in the East District reset. The city roared back to life with a collective gasp. Rian and Sera exchanged a look that said everything. Trouble was returning, as it always did. Sera's comm implant flickered, a faint pulse that wasn't an alert, more like a whisper, a buried frequency she hadn't heard since her field days. She excused herself, walking to the balcony's edge. "Ethria Civic Control, this is Vix. I'm off duty, but I just witnessed a grid pulse anomaly in..." Static swallowed her words. Then, through the static, a voice. "Officer Vix, stay clear. This is above civic clearance." When she turned back, her expression was the calm mask Rian had learned to read as the surface over deep water. That was odd. "You mean the part where your old department told you not to do your job?" "Exactly that part." The city resumed its thrum, pretending nothing had happened, but the faint tremor beneath their feet continued, a rhythm too steady to be an accident. Rian frowned. "That's under the East Grid, the sector where Helix Meridian used to have its lower warehouses." Sera's tail lashed once, agitation disguised as thought. "They said the cleanup was complete." "Yeah," Rian said, "and we've both learned how much that's worth." 2 nights later, Sera appeared at Rian's door in civilian stealth gear, hood down, eyes bright with that old dangerous glint. "You still have that Aster 9 tuned for quiet running?" Rian arched an eyebrow. "Are we pretending this is a date? If we get caught, you can tell them that?" He grinned. "That's all I needed." They rode together through sleeping lanes, slipping into the abandoned East Grid sector, where the neon faded to rust. The blackout zone stretched before them like a forgotten scar, the old Helix towers looming like hollow bones. Sera dismounted, scanning the air with a small handheld reader. "There's residual radiation from biocontainment cells here. Low levels, but active." Rian looked uneasy. "Active as in leaking? Active as in something's powered." They found the source 3 blocks down, an access gate disguised as a maintenance port. Someone had restored it recently. The lock plate gleamed with new code lines. Sera crouched, tail sweeping the dust behind her. Corporate encryption. But not Helix. This prefix belongs to someone new. Umbradine. Rian's mouth twisted. They're worse, she nodded. Then we do this carefully. The gate opened into a shaft that smelled like ozone and burned coolant. They descended on magnetic tethers, landing in a tunnel where machines hummed faintly. Rian's hand brushed the wall. It was warm. This place shouldn't have power, he said. It doesn't, Sera murmured, eyes narrowing. Someone's feeding it from the civic grid, hidden channels. They followed the hum until it became a steady pulse. The tunnel opened into a vast subterranean chamber, illuminated by the cold blue light of containment pods, dozens of them arranged in rings like seeds in a flower. Within, Rian swallowed hard. Artificial life? Biosynths? Hybrid vessels? Someone's trying to rebuild Helix's research and improve it. Her ears twitched again. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Not one pair. Many. They ducked behind a cargo rack just as a group entered the chamber, figures in matte armor marked with the silver spiral of Umbradine. At their center walked a man Sera recognized instantly, Commander Inayasol's deputy, the one who had handed down her suspension. Well, Rian whispered, either your boss moonlights as a villain, or someone's paying her friends well. From their hiding place, they watched as the Umbradine commander approached the nearest containment ring. Phase 2 begins tonight, he said. The prototypes will be moved to orbit for integration. One of the techs hesitated. Sir, what about civic control oversight? The commander smiled thinly. Oversight reports to us now. The city believes it's safe. Sera's claws flexed reflexively against the metal crate. The sound was almost imperceptible, but the nearest guard tilted his head. Rian caught her hand before she could move. We can't fight 30 of them, he whispered. We need proof. Her tail flicked once. And you're going to get it? You're the hacker. I'm the thief. He pointed toward a console near the entrance. Cover me. Sera nodded. Rian darted between shadows, light-footed as the air itself. He reached the console, connected a data shard from his wristband, and began the silent upload. Each second stretched thin as wire. Then a low alarm pulsed, not loud but sharp. One of the guards turned. Who's there? Sera moved. Her strike was a flash of controlled fury, a silent lunge, a sweep. A stun charge pressed to a guard's throat before he could cry out. The others reacted instantly. Plasma bolts ripped through the air, painting the dark in blue fire. Rian dived behind the console as sparks rained around him. Sera, he shouted. Almost done. She somersaulted behind a containment ring, tail snapping for balance, returning fire with her pulse pistol. Her movements were poetry wrapped in muscle memory, a blur of orange and shadow. Rian's upload hit 90% when a rifle round caught his shoulder, spinning him sideways. The shard nearly fell from his grip. Sera's snarl filled the room, raw, guttural, vulpine. She vaulted over the console, caught him, and dragged him into cover. You're hit. Just a graze. He forced a grin. But you owe me dinner again. The upload finished. The console chimed, low and clear. Sera slapped a detonation charge onto it. Let's make sure they can't trace it. They sprinted toward the exit as the chamber erupted behind them, containment pods bursting in a storm of light and vapor. They emerged into the night through a storm drain, the world outside already echoing with sirens. Umbradine's patrol drones streaked overhead, scanning the streets with surgical precision. Rian stumbled to his bike, wincing at the pain in his arm. You realize we just robbed a corporation twice the size of Helix, right? Sera swung onto the bike behind him, wrapping one arm around his waist. You realize you're bleeding on your seat? He smirked. Worth it. They shot into the air lanes, weaving through the architecture like a silver dart chased by wolves. Drones closed in, firing suppression nets that crackled with electric arcs. Sera fired backward, each pulse of her pistol lighting the sky. One drone clipped the bike's wing and sent them spinning through a spiraling descent. Rian fought the controls, shouting, "Hang on." They skimmed past a monorail, sparks slicing the night before leveling out mere meters above a maintenance trench. "Remind me," Sera said breathlessly, "why do I let you drive?" "Because you like living dangerously." They hid the bike in a ventilation shaft under Dock 12 and ducked into a freight terminal. Rian's shoulder burned. Sera patched it with steady, gentle hands. "You could have stayed out," she murmured. "And let them build monsters under my city? Not a chance." He pulled the data shard from his pocket, blood smearing the edges. "You think this is enough? It has to be?" Sera's contacts in civic analysis could push the data into secure channels, but not openly. The oversight branch was compromised. Saul's name was buried in those files somewhere. Rian leaned back against the cold metal wall. "What if she comes after you again?" Sera's ears flattened briefly. "Then she'll find out I'm harder to leash the second time." Outside, the sirens faded into distance. They stayed hidden until dawn, the first sunlight turning the orange of her fur into fire. Sera watched the broadcast from Rian's workshop. "Anonymous sources," the anchor said. "Data origin. Unknown." Rian turned to her with a grin. "Guess some ghosts can still make noise." She chuckled, a low, melodic sound. "You've gotten good at disappearing. Learn from the best." They stood there in silence for a moment, the hum of the city returning to its steady rhythm. Outside, couriers zipped through the lanes again, free and oblivious. "Now what?" Rian asked. Sera looked at him, eyes catching the light like molten gold. "Now," she said, "we live. No conspiracies. No trackers. Just days." He smiled. "Days sound nice." Months later, the legend of the courier and the fox became a rumor whispered among Ethria's underworkers. They said the two had vanished beyond the West Ridge, where the city's light faded into wilderness. Some claimed to have seen a silver bike streaking across the skyline, with a rider in a dark coat and another with fur that caught the sunset like flame. In truth, Rian and Sera had found a quiet outpost beyond the grid's edge, a little dome by a frozen lake where drones didn't patrol, and the stars felt honest. She still woke some nights, ears flicking at phantom sirens, and he still checked the comms for messages that would never come. But then they'd sit by the water, watch the auroras paint the ice, and remember that for once, neither of them was being hunted. Rian would trace a finger along her tail, and she'd smile without looking away from the horizon. "Do you think the city misses us?" he asked. Sera's voice was soft, almost a purr. "Cities don't miss people. They just make room for the next story." He laughed. "Then let's give it one worth forgetting." And beneath the endless twilight of Ethria Prime, the courier and the fox disappeared into legend, two souls stitched together by chaos, trust, and the stubborn refusal to stop running toward the light. The outpost was a glass bead on tundra, a dome that breathed with them. In the morning, frost etched fern-like patterns along the panels. By noon, sunlight blurred the lake into a mirror. Rian learned the taste of unfiltered air and the way ice spoke when it shifted. Sera learned the names of nearby night birds, their calls low and fluted, and the patient grammar of stillness. They kept habits that felt like anchors. Rian tuned the Aster 9 each week, swapping coils that didn't need swapping, pretending the bike could smell the horizon. Sera ran drills at dawn, breathing ladders, balance lines on slick stone, slow forms that braided strength and memory. Sometimes she moved with her eyes closed, ears pricked to wind. Sometimes she asked him to call out numbers at random and pivoted toward them without looking. "Listening is faster than sight," she'd say, and he'd believe her because he'd seen her prove it 100 ways. They cooked in the small galley. Rian chopped like a technician. Sera seasoned like a gambler, pinching spices by scent. He made him pepper potatoes the way dock hands taught him years ago. She grilled riverfish on a slate heated by the dome's vent. They ate on the threshold, boots on snow, watching auroras write cursive over stone pines. The silence wasn't absence anymore. It was presence, the kind that allowed words to land softly and stay. "Do you think we're done?" Rian asked one night, steam rising from his mug. With what? Sera leaned into his shoulder, orange for warm under his jacket. Running, fighting, being rearranged by other people's plans. Her tail tapped his boot, a thoughtful metronome. No one's plans are here but ours, she said. That's why we came. A pause. But cities remember us, and remembering is a kind of invitation. He stared into the lake. A single white trout made a ripple, then vanished. If it comes, he said. We choose the door. Sera's ears angled toward the wind. And the lock, she added, smiling. The message came as a soft pulse in the dome's relay, an old courier band frequency wrapped in static and courtesy. Rian recognized the handshake before the audio decoded. Rian Cade, a voice said, Gravel, tired, kind. This is Jom Verdon, Guild Elder, provisional. We wouldn't call if it wasn't crooked. Athria's lanes have a sickness. Pilots are vanishing on clean routes. No wreckage, no fares, no pings. We found scorch on a service ribbon, and a dent in the sky no one can explain. People are whispering about Umberdine's retrenchment, but oversight says it's weather. Weather doesn't steal names. A small breath. They spent an afternoon putting their lives into boxes that could wait. Sera sealed a tin with loose tea and tucked it into a drawer. Rian labeled a crate spare mornings and left it empty on purpose. They powered the dome down to a sip. Outside, the lake held the sky like a secret. At twilight, he straddled the Aster 9 and offered Sera the back seat with a small, theatrical bow. She climbed on, tail looping around his waist, chin at his shoulder. Back to the thrum, she murmured. To keep it honest, he said, and they lifted into a sky cold enough to bite, warm enough to carry. Ethria Prime swelled out of dusk like a promise it could actually keep. The guild hall was new by city standards, only 2 renovations and a scandal. But its walls already wore the fingerprints of 1,000 pilots. A battered board listed call signs in chalk, a poor defense against loss. Jom Verdon looked exactly like he sounded. You brought a fox, he said, surprised into a smile that made him look briefly young. Good. Sera's ears tipped in greeting. Sera Vix, civilian analysis, former field. She let the word former sit exactly where it needed to. Jom spread schematics across the scarred table. 3 disappearances in 7 days, he said, tapping routes with a thick finger. All on standard corridors, all within 4 clicks of atmospheric scrubber pylons. The Civic Guard logged the weather spalls, then closed the files. We sent 2 scouts. They returned with nothing but a story about heat shimmer in the wrong air and lane markers that slid a meter sideways when you weren't looking. Optics warping, Sera murmured. Or microlensing. Or both. Rian leaned in. Who benefits from lanes you can't trust? Jom grimaced. The people selling the new SmartNav chips? Umberdine bought 3 chip houses last month. They're offering pilots a discount if they sign the maintenance contract, he added, voice sour. Rian and Sera traded a look. There it was. Profit with teeth. We'll need a clean test run, Sera said. No contracts, no chips. Analog redundancy. And people who can keep their hands off the panic button. Jom nodded at Rian. That part I got. They launched at midnight, when the city's noise fell a register and the lanes thinned to silver threads. Rian flew manual, eyes on the world rather than the panel. Sera rode pillion, hands braced on the frame, a compact sensor rig clamped to her forearm. Heat spike, she said softly, as they neared the first pylon. But it's not thermal. It's field energy, layered like 2 panes of glass misaligned, and then forced to kiss. Romantic, Rian said. For sabotage. The lane posts ahead shimmered. Not a mirage, not water, more like reality deciding to breathe differently right there. Rian eased off. The Aster 9 wobbled a fraction, then stabilized. Do you see that? He asked. I hear it, Sera said. It's not sound. It's pressure in the wrong place. They hovered at the edge of the shimmer. Sera extended a wand into space the city insisted was normal. The wand sang. She withdrew it quickly. The tip was bleached, as if erased. Lane thieves, she murmured. No, lane eaters. A light flared above them, a quiet, predatory star. A drone with Umbradine spiral took an elegant, proprietary arc in the sky, as if drawing a question mark around their audacity. "It's mapping the distortion," Sera said, and nudging it. "Can drones nudge a physics hiccup?" Rian asked. "With enough wrong money," Sera replied. "Yes." Rian throttled back and dropped below standard, clipping the shadow between support trusses. The drone lingered, curious. Rian smiled without humor. "Let's be impolite." They skimmed a maintenance ribbon where no one put pretty lights. Sera flicked 3 switches on her rig, each a polite betrayal of 10 municipal codes, and the drone's lens blinked once like a surprised animal. "Hello," she said to the air. "Goodbye." The drone slewed hard and lost altitude, fighting a signal that wasn't there. Rian knifed past, feeling the wake tug at the Aster 9's belly. He angled toward the lane's shimmer, where the posts quivered as if holding breath. "Give me a stable node," he said. Sera tuned the rig's frequency until her ears flattened from the pressure. "There," she gritted. "Push through when it dips. Not before." The shimmer pulsed. Full, empty, full. Like a heartbeat in glass. On the empty, Rian punched it. The world went thin. For a second, the bike felt unmade. Bolts forgetting why they belonged together. Sera's hand found his shoulder blade and pressed, the simplest, oldest anchor. Then they were through, and the sky sharpened around them like a lens focusing. Behind, the shimmer snapped back, annoyed. "Inside the veil," Rian breathed. He glanced back. Sera had already captured the mark. "New player," she said. "Or an old one with new clothes." "Can they hear us?" Rian asked. "If they can, we already said too much." He laughed despite himself. "Story of my life." They ghosted back through the shimmer and parked 2 districts away under the lip of an intake bridge. Sera's rig hummed softly as it chewed data and chewed it again. "Hexasite," she announced, eyes narrow. "Front company, 10 months old, backed by a fund that doesn't like sunlight. They sell adaptive spatial solutions to cargo ports and orbital farms. Legal work on paper. Illegal work in passwords. Their office is 3 floors below a T-bar with very good citrus buns." "Danger plus buns," Rian said. "Your favorite." "Only when I pick the danger." They went at noon, in plain clothes and the kind of swagger that reads as service tech if you look quickly. The T-bar did, in fact, smell like citrus buns. Sera bought 2 for cover. Rian paid in cash and left an overlarge tip surreptitiously attached to a napkin doodle of the guild's symbol. It would buy a rumor later. The elevator ignored buttons labeled Hexasite. Sera didn't. She slid a thin blade of code into the panel's seam. The doors sighed them into a lobby that tried and failed to look boring. Matawalls, a plant too glossy to be alive, a receptionist whose smile was a brand. "We're here to recalibrate your fire safety dampers," Rian lied, because people preferred lies that made them safer. The receptionist consulted a screen that no one else could see. "You're early," she said. "Practice," he replied, and her smile conceded a point to charm. They were 3 corridors deep when the building decided it was done pretending. Doors shuddered. A whine built, the kind that sets teeth on edge. Sera's ears pinned flat. Her tail flared once to help her pivot, then settled low for balance. "You hear that?" Rian asked. "It's the same note as the lane veil," she said, voice tight. "They're tuning reality." "Inside an office tower? Where else would you hide it?" She reached for his hand. "Stay with me." He squeezed back. The corridors wavered, but Sera didn't. She closed her eyes and listened to the way the air moved, the faintest drag on her fur, the small murmurs machines made when they lied. "Left at the potted tree," she said. "Then right at the door that's pretending to be a wall." He didn't argue. She was right. They hit a final security door, no keypad, no handle. Just a flat expanse of material that pretended it had always been there. Sera pulled a small silver disc from her pocket. The only thing Orrin had left her besides caution. She stuck it to the door, exhaled once, and tapped the center. Entropy spike, she told the door gently. Nothing personal. The panel sighed as if relieved to stop pretending. It parted. Inside, a room full of lattice projectors hummed like a choir with bad intentions, and a woman in a gray suit turned to face them, eyes bright as coin. The hexagon eye logo pulsed faintly at her lapel. "Welcome to Hexasite," she said. "You must be Rian and Sera Vix. We've been expecting you." Her voice was soft, precisely calibrated, every syllable a test. The woman's fur was faintly silver at the temples, her eyes an amber too polished to be natural. Sera took one small step forward, tail low, ready. "You're tuning lanes," she said. "Stealing energy grids, folding light. Why?" The woman smiled without warmth. "Because the city wastes potential. The lanes are arteries. We just redirect a little blood. The old guilds grew lazy. The corporations too visible. Hexasite is leaner." Rian circled the room, slowly, counting projectors, entry angles, distances. "You're collapsing transit corridors," he said. "People die in those folds." The woman tilted her head. "Collateral anomalies. Progress costs." Sera's fur rippled down her neck like an electric shiver. "You're playing God with geometry," she said. "I prefer engineer," the woman said lightly. "And you, Miss Vix, should appreciate the principle. Precision over chaos." Ryan's patience cracked. "You sound like Umberdine's echo chamber." "We bought their silence," she replied, "but not their fear. You two are a problem because you survived the veil." Rian's hand found the plasma cutter on instinct. "Then fix your math," he said. The gray-suited woman sighed, as though disappointed in a student. "You can't shoot numbers, courier." "Good thing I'm aiming for machinery." Sera didn't wait for the order. Her rig surged, broadcasting a counter-frequency she'd built from every wrong note Hexasite had left in the air. The hum in the room turned feral. One by one, the projectors, they ran. The corridor twisted as if offended. But Sera's hearing was a compass truer than sight. The elevator had reverted to ordinary steel by the time they reached it. They rode in silence, buns still in the paper bag swinging from Rian's wrist. He grinned despite the adrenaline. "You still got lunch." Sera exhaled a shaky laugh. Small victories. They didn't have to guess when Hexasite fell. The skyline told them. That night, a column of blue-white light shot skyward from Etheria's core, twisting the air. A shockwave followed, delicate but citywide, rattling glass for miles. By morning, every civic channel was choking on statements about a localized data anomaly. No one used the word explosion. John Verdon called on a secure line. "The guild's getting credit for exposing an illegal lane efficiency experiment," he said. "Guess whose names are nowhere on the report?" "Wouldn't want to ruin the mystery," Rian said. "Stay quiet," John warned. "Whoever ran that outfit had long pockets and longer shadows. You've earned a few years of ghosts." When the line went dead, Rian stared at the horizon, where the shimmer that had haunted the lanes was finally gone. The city's hum felt steadier, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm again. Sera joined him on the ledge, fur brushed by early wind. "We could disappear again," she said. "Find a quieter dome, further north." He shook his head. "Quiet's good, but maybe not forever." Her tail twined around his wrist. "Then we stay moving. It's what we do." They left Etheria before dawn. The guild owed them nothing but gratitude unspoken, and that was enough. The Aster 9 carried them along rebuilt lanes, the air finally calm. They didn't talk much at first. The hum of the bike was language enough, 2 heartbeats in sync. Halfway to the outer rim, Sera leaned forward, her muzzle close to his ear. "Do you think anyone ever really stops running?" Rian smiled. "Only if they find someone worth slowing down for." She was quiet for a beat, then, "Careful." That sounded almost romantic. Almost? Her laugh was a sound he'd missed more than he'd realized. "We'll work on it." The clouds thinned, revealing the wide blue arc of Neosol's sunrise. Light spilled across her fur, setting her in gold fire. For a moment, Rian thought of all the versions of himself this city had tried to erase, and how she, against all odds, had rewritten him instead. They returned to the lake weeks later. The dome still breathed where they'd left it, its systems patiently waiting. Moss had begun to climb the lower panels. The air smelled of thaw. Inside, Rian unpacked a single bag, no crates, no maps. Sera opened the tin of tea she'd left sealed, its scent still sharp. He watched her pour 2 cups. To what? He asked. To absence, she said. And to presence. The space in between. They drank. Outside, wind rippled the lake. Somewhere far away, cities hummed, lanes healed, and names were written back onto the world. Sera leaned against him, her tail brushing his knee. You realize, she murmured, I'll still keep an eye on you. Rian smiled into the steam of his cup. With your own 2 eyes, I hope. Her ears flicked, amused. Those. And maybe 1 hidden sensor. Just for old times' sake. He laughed, a full sound that broke the morning's quiet. The dome settled around them like a held breath, not of fear this time, but of peace. The hum of distant engines became the faintest lullaby, and the perpetual twilight of the world beyond found its echo in their stillness. The road, for now, could wait.